Welcome back to the shop here at Basin Motorsports. I'm Canaan. Today, you see behind me, I'm going to show you how to make yourself just a blank basic windshield banner for your car. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is show you how to make a windshield banner. Now, I do have one currently on my Corvette. That is the gloss black that is there, and I'm going to take that off and replace it. So the first thing I did is I put the blue painter's tape around the molding. That is going to be our outline border, and it will keep the vinyl wrap from sticking to the molding as you're laying it out. Now on the bottom edge, I'm going to use some of the wrap cut. This is a cutting strip that will cut the vinyl on the bottom side, and I've just laid it out. If I show you closely, I've laid it out right where the bottom edge of the vinyl is. Now if you need to figure out where to stop the vinyl, a lot of times most states have a rule. You can see there the mark that says ASI or AS1, however you want to read that. That is typically the lowest you can put tinting on a windshield or a windshield banner. And I'm just going to stay above that edge on both sides. Now, if you stand back, you can see that that curves all the way around the windshield. And if you look at the windshield side to side from the front, it looks roughly even. The best thing about having that wrap cut along the bottom is that it's easy to move. If it's not exactly where you want, you can just pick it up and relay it down. Now, in order to do this process, I've already laid out my blue painter's tape, which I don't have the roll in the frame. The wrap cut is here. I've also got a razor blade so I can trim the edges under the molding, something to measure with. The color I'm going to go with is the same KPMF Opulent Indigo Blue. This is the same vinyl that I used on the engine bay previously and on the diffuser on the car. I have a squeegee with the buffer on it, and then I've just got a pair of vinyl wrap gloves or glove protection to put this on. Don't need a lot of tools, but I do have links for all of this stuff down in the video description if you need to buy some. Okay, so the next piece of this, once you have your defined area layout of where your vinyl is going to be stuck to, you then need to decide how big to make it, or how big your area is really. And that is where you're going to bring in your measuring tape. I've just got a fabric one from the upholstery shop here, just to define that. Now, I can tell you, I've already measured this. This is about 6.5 from top to bottom, but on the edges, it's a little bit about 8.25. And that's just because the windshield curves and gets bigger on the way back. Now, I'm just trying to make this straight across on the bottom side, on the bottom edge, but it does curve around and follow that. So now that I know that my biggest spot or my biggest dimension, top to bottom, is going to be about 8.5, I'm going to make this piece at least 10 inches tall. And that's going to give me a little overhang on the wrap cut. It's also going to give me a little bit of overhang on the top. You can always go bigger, just don't go any smaller than about 1 inch on each direction. Now, side to side, remember how you cut this is going to depend on how big your windshield is in order to do this. This is approximately 58 inches from this molding all the way across over there to that molding. The vinyl wrap itself is 60 inches in width, so that I can just use a piece straight across. If the windshield is bigger side to side than the vinyl piece, you'll obviously have to change how you orient the cut to make sure your vinyl matches. But I'm going to go ahead and double check my measurement, and I can also take off this old one to lay out with the new piece, but it'll fit. Okay, so here's what it's going to look like when you lay them out. Now, because I am taking off old vinyl and it has the shape I need, I can just lay it out so that you see kind of visually how it is. Now, again, I have the front and rear off. I'm going to do the rear also since I'm doing this process, but it's the same exact process that way. You can see that I have, now once you have your vinyl cut to size, go ahead and clean your window with 70% isopropyl alcohol and a lint-free cloth. Make sure you get all your corners and all the lines there. Once you have that, you can then take the backing off the vinyl and start to lay it down. Remember, you just want to make sure it covers everywhere, and we're going to start laying it out or start squeezing out the air from behind the vinyl to the glass in the very center and work our way to the edges. All right, so here's what it's going to look like when you have your vinyl in its rough position. Notice that the windshield is curved. It's going to take you probably 2 or 3 or maybe even more times trying to lay this down to make sure all of your edges are covered, because everything's curved it's going to take a little bit to try and put a flat rectangle essentially around a curved windshield. Now once you have it in rough place, double check yourself, make sure you have plenty of vinyl covering everywhere, and then we're going to start in our center. You can start just with your fingers itself and your gloves like this. You can then just kind of lay it down top to bottom, get it really close, get as much air out as possible, and you're going to work yourself to the edges. Now what you'll find is you're going to start getting wrinkles in this as it goes along, and you can go ahead and lift the vinyl up as needed. You can also use a squeegee, and if it gets really difficult, use a little bit of heat from an electric heat gun. I prefer that for people that are newer to vinyl. It's a lot more forgiving. You can heat the vinyl up as you need to give it a little bit more pliability, let it stretch a little bit, and then you can just lay it down. This really doesn't take a lot of pressure. Just lay it down, get the air out, use a little bit of heat if needed. My garage is above 70 degrees, so this is going to be pretty easy. And then we're just going to work all the way around to the edges before we try to cut anything. Okay, once you have it all laid out and you have all of the air out of it, you'll notice that you're going to have some tough areas here on the edges. We're going to cut these out last. So first I'm going to work on my wrap cut. So I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to take the filament out of this and I'm going to pull it at a 90 or 180 degree angle. And I want to make sure I pull against this versus pulling up. I want to make sure I pull against the wrap that way. And I'm going to cut it all the way across the bottom. You can also use a heat gun, same heat gun, to kind of heat up the edges and get it to tuck. Now, if you go long on the moldings themselves, typically the vinyl will tuck underneath with a credit card or something thin. So with this, once we get to that cutting piece, using a razor, we're going to go ahead and cut along the top. Our blue painter's tape also gives us a boundary of cutting for the vinyl and the razor so you don't cut into your molding. And we're going to cut along the edge and go ahead and peel it up. So let's start with our wrap cut along the bottom, and then we're going to show you how to quickly do the cut on the top with a razor, and then we'll leave it a little long and tuck it behind the moldings. Now once you have all your cuts made from your wrap cut on the bottom edge, your sides, and your top, this is what it's going to look like after the painter's tape has come off. This is the finished product. I didn't use much heat, but I did a little bit of heat just on the edges to make sure it was tight to our moldings. But that's the finished product. Just kind of look around here. Pretty simple to do. And that'll last a couple of years, I expect, similar to what I just had done. And again, if you go ahead and do the back side or the back window on the Corvette, this is what I do with mine. Just pull it down just far enough to cover up all the bubbling on the top or the dimples on the top, and then just down the sides. Something simple. It's a similar color to the flames, and then I'll run this for a couple of years till it starts to look a little worn, and then I'll replace it with something else, maybe black again or something else. Okay, so that's a pretty simple project you can do in home garage with some basic tools. Now remember, I've linked everything down below in the video description. This is something you can probably do within an hour, hour and a half, maybe somewhere in there. And it's pretty simple to do for pretty cheap. You don't have to have the custom ones ordered. Just remember, always cover a little extra on the edges, some extra length, extra width, and just take your time laying it out and it will come out great. Now beyond this, you can go ahead and add in lettering if you wanted to do that. I will probably do that to the Corvette here just to have the upholstery shop represented. And that is something you can do pretty simply. Just have vinyl cut out, unless you want to do it by hand. Otherwise, check out the video description for any questions or comments, and we'll see you next time.